Hello, my dear friends. My name is Yuri Kofner. I'm an economist with the MIVI Institute for Market Integration and Policy Advice. And today I have a great expert as a guest. His name is Daniel. He is the head of or he's running the Twitter channel More Births, because the topic we're going to talk about with Dan, he's from the United States, from the Washington D.C. area, is declining fertility rates, which is actually a very serious topic. Declining fertility rates in the West, for example, in the United States, the fertility rate I just looked up, it's 1.6 births per woman. In Germany, it's even a little bit lower, it's 1.5. And so I invited Dan over to have a discussion tonight and to see, actually, first of all, what are the reasons for these low fertility rates, because they are below the sustainable rate of 2.1. What are the factors? Are they societal factors, cultural factors? Is it because people cannot afford housing, cannot afford to have children? Or is it something else? Maybe the environment has changed. And then also, so Dan will give a presentation. He will also discuss potential policy measures and solutions to address these issues. But first, we'll jump into it. Dan, thanks for having you. Maybe just
thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a topic that's been on my mind for a long time, and because you've heard Elon Musk say this is the greatest crisis that humanity faces, and it's something that we all need to focus on, and we all need to become educated on, we all need to become experts on. And I'm really focusing on Twitter on causes and solutions to the great fertility crisis that's going to be the biggest challenge that so many countries face going forward in this next century and beyond.
Yeah. So, but before we jump into it, you have a presentation. Just tell us a little bit more about yourself. So you live in Washington D.C.
Yeah, I'm in the D.C. area. I'm a father of 6, and I was originally interested in investing, and which I am still interested in that. But what was remarkable to me as I delve deeper is that actually the currents of economies float on something much larger, which is the demographic trends. And I recently tweeted a thread about how the great economist Tyler Cowen, who's one of the most visible economists on online, and one of the most influential policymakers, recently talked about the end of economic growth in the world. This should be traumatic and shocking. We had the World Economic Forum. What happens if economic growth ends in the world? We're talking literal declining civilization. So the birth rate crisis is that serious and that consequential for the course of events.
Mm-hmm. Population collapse, right?
Population collapse is where things are headed if things don't change. But I try to take an optimistic take that it is possible to modify culture, and it is possible to change and reorient society in a way that's more conducive to family formation, more conducive to people having children. And I believe we can solve this with a lot of heart over a long period of time, a lot of understanding.
So before we go into the solutions, just to maybe start with your presentation and tell us what are the main reasons that fertility has been declining in the past decades.
Wonderful.
Put it on the screen, and there we go. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So this is so all of Europe suffers from low birth rates. The whole world is increasingly having this problem. East Asia has a serious problem. North America, South America are almost completely below replacement, much of the world now. And Germany's fertility rate has plunged even further just in recent years. These are the current figures for 2021 is 1.58 births per woman. It looks like it may have plummeted as low as 1.36 births per woman in 2023, according to the latest figures that I have seen. And So Germany is now one of the oldest countries in the world. Here on the left, you see a map of the average age of different countries, and there's three countries in the whole world that are older than every other country, and that is Germany, Italy, and Japan. So Germany, because they've had low birth rates for 50 years or more, are very far along in the path of demographic decline. And here on the right, you see a map of Europe, and even all of Europe is aging, and all of Europe has had low birth rates. Most of Europe has had low birth rates for a very long time, but you can see actually that the old age dependency ratio, that is the rate of elderly, is higher in Germany than almost any other part of Europe, and by extension, almost anywhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So Germany is a nation in demographic decline. Germany was 3.5% of the world's population in 1900. Germany is now falling below 1% of the world's population. There is a little bit of a bright side in the fact that Germany hasn't been collapsing so quickly due to a lot of very important and very valuable family policies that Germany implemented, including very advanced, very progressive forms of childcare and different family supports. Germany is one of the more generous countries in the world, and that has actually been a great benefit to help Germany not fall further. Germany once had the lowest fertility of almost any country. Maybe 40, 50 years ago, Germany has not seen its fertility recover, but at least it hasn't seen things further deteriorate as much as some countries. There's many countries in East Asia now that are falling below 1 birth per woman. So many countries are facing right now even more catastrophic collapse. Countries like Korea is one country we hear a lot about. Actually, China, one of the most populous countries in the world, is now falling below 1 birth per woman. So really shocking statistics coming in from all over the world. So is this a solvable problem? Yes, it is, but it is extremely difficult to solve, and there is a current and a trend to think, don't worry about demographics because we can't solve this anyway. But that's completely untrue. And I want to talk about 2 examples of countries that solve this problem. One is groups of people that solve this problem. One is the Jewish people, and later the country of Israel. Throughout the time before the establishment of Israel, and leading up to the tragedies of World War II, Jewish fertility was actually among the lowest in Europe. It was even very, very low by modern standards. So the Jewish people actually had a demographic crisis even before World War II, and then the calamities of World War II were unspeakably awful. But what emerged out of this was there was a conscious determination among the Jewish people to be pronatal, and Israel now has a fertility of higher than 3 births per woman, so far above replacement. So and France is another example. Fertility in France dropped 200 years ago, and actually all through the 1800s and into the 20th century, France had very, very low fertility, far lower than the rest of Europe. And France was shrinking compared with every other country. World War II was a terrible shock to France as they saw their own diminishment, and France at that point developed a very pronatal culture and has had the highest fertility in Europe ever since. So these are cases where you really had a long run, a deep cultural shift toward pronatalism, and you saw a lasting higher fertility in these countries. And so here,
just before you go to the next slide now, you said in France it's not only the immigrants, because that was my first thought. Of course, they have a large immigration in France the last decade, or at
Well,
least
yes.
until
So
war.
yeah, France does. Yeah. Part of that higher fertility may be due to immigrants, but also French people, native French people as well, have very high fertility also. So this
How
is not
much do you know?
the exact breakdown. I don't have in front of me right now, but I can say that the higher fertility in France has been something that's been consistent for the last 80 years, and uh, it's not merely the immigrants, but it's across the whole of society. It tends to be not not above replacement, but it's been across the last 80 years, it's been a lot closer to replacement. And so the French demographic picture in terms of age and so forth is is better than that of most of the rest of Europe.
I see what you mean. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
So and here we can take a look again. Here's a population of a pyramid of Israel. So and here you can see the birth rate or the fertility rate of Israel as compared to different countries in the OECD, and Israel stands far above the rest. So uh, most of the OECD, actually all of the OECD now, including Mexico and Turkey now, are also now below replacement. But so Israel remains as the only developed country in the whole world that has above replacement fertility. But the thing to remember is that Israel actually had, or the Jewish people, I should say, uh, before before World War II had extremely low fertility before a big terrible tragedy, and then a very big cultural shift toward pronatalism. And here we see in France, uh, you can see that this is when the fertility transition uh, took place in France. France transitioned to low fertility many decades, in some cases up to a century before the rest of Europe, due to secularization and other factors. And now, if you look at fertility rate in 2019, France had among the highest fertility in Europe, and was that way for most of the 20th century. So we think of France as a very high fertility country, but for the 100 years uh, before World War II and more, France was by far the lowest fertility country in Europe. So
Okay.
a deep cultural shift was possible, and this should give us hope. So a question of how to communicate this crisis. As I say, the most important thing I think is awareness and a determination to change culture, and how do we communicate that? Of course, Germany, having a certain history, has to be very careful about how to communicate that. And one of the best ways, I think, to communicate that is the reality that across many countries, and including Germany, the fertility desires of women are not realized. So here you can see on this chart, this is a study that was done. They surveyed young women at the age of 20 to 24 on what their fertility intentions were, and they later found at the end of their fertility period that most of these women had not achieved their intended or desired fertility. So there was a gap, and so that's another way to communicate this fertility crisis, is that women are not having the children that they desire. And relatedly, here's another chart from that study. We can see the share of women who intended at the age of 20 to 24 to have children and then ended up childless. So in Germany, that is extremely high. Almost 25% of German women end up childless, and it may be more for the coming generations, but less than 5% of German women wanted to have no children at the age of 20 to 24. So this is a different angle to the crisis that's a lot more that makes a lot more sense in terms of communication. The fact that another way of looking at this crisis is that women are not able to have the children that they hoped to have. And another very important point, especially when when we think about this as people with political viewpoints is to be aware that political cooperation across the aisle is essential to solving this problem. Pronatalism cannot be just a right-wing thing. It has to be uh, a universal topic, and it is crucial to engage all political sides on this. Partly because in recent times, it is the case in Germany that more women are on the political left and more men are on the political right. So if this becomes if pronatalism were to be seen as simply a right wing thing, you could actually alienate women who are obviously central to solving this issue.
Yeah.
And here you can see actually over time, we can see political polarization by gender has increased. You can see the a higher value indicates more polarization. So what we're actually seeing in recent years is that we are finding more women young women especially on the political left and more young men on the political right, and this so in solving this problem, maintaining harmony uh, and warm feelings between men and women is essential. And a great example of where this has gone wrong is Korea, where the political gap between men and women is extraordinary, and there's a hot gender war, if you will, between men and women in Korea, and Korea has the lowest birth rate of any country in the world. So this is a very crucial point to keep in mind, that this should not become a rancorous political battle where pronatalists are on the right and antinatalists are on the left. Because if more women are on the left, you could actually end up with a worse outcome than when you started. You really have to have
Can you go back, Daniel, quickly to the
Sure.
I have a question here, so that we are all on the same page and that we understand correctly. So what you're saying is that in general, men are more conservative, especially in Korea. They are more on the right-wing aisle of politics, so which means they are supportive of a conservative family image, patriarchal family. He's the bread earner, and the woman has to stay at home and has to get children. And on the other hand, when you say left, women are more on the left, which means it's the idea that women should be able to pursue a career, and having children is not that important. Just to understand what you mean with right and left in that sense.
I'm talking about how they vote for political parties, but there is in Korea especially, there among men there's this very strong patriarchal mindset, and women are strongly against the old norms, and since women are in some sense the gatekeepers, that you're ending up in Korea with this tragic outcome of many women refusing to marry. And what my point is that this heavy-handed approach is not working, and there really needs to be less heated negative feelings, and much more cooperation and harmony between the genders, I would even say. And so I speaking in particular to men need to be flexible and open to every kind of family arrangement. If women want to stay home and raise a big family while the husband supports the family, great. If women want to work while raising a family, also wonderful. What is the best family model? Whatever a couple agrees on. That too often people are locked into one particular mode. And this chart, this is a very interesting chart. It's by Works in Progress, is a very interesting outlet that has done some research, and what they've actually found is that where there are countries that have very sort of traditionalist expectations, countries like Italy, or Albania, Poland. These are countries with lower birth rates and countries that are actually more accepting of women in the workplace. Countries like Denmark and Sweden, these actually have higher birth rates, and this seems contradictory, but actually it makes sense if you realize that what these countries are doing are allowing more options and more possibilities for ways to achieve parenthood. And so for all those women in these countries who want to work and have a family, countries like Denmark and Sweden uh, are permitting that, and they see higher birth rates. Germany, we find, is somewhere in the middle of the chart, but it really does show that having overly restrictive or patriarchal norms can actually backfire and result in a lower birth rate. And on a national level, you want to be welcoming to all kinds of families, even if a traditional model can work on an individual basis. On a national level, you want to have a culture that really embraces all kinds of families.
Mhm.
If you want to have a healthier birth rate. So talking about what can conservatives do on a personal basis. Now, it is true that conservative values on an individual basis are associated with higher fertility. So an individual couple that has more conservative values is more likely to have more children. And it is in the United States, this is actually a very strong correlation. Conservative people do have larger families. But at the same time, on a societal level, you need to have a culture that embraces all kinds. But conservatives on an individual basis could really have a huge impact by modeling large families within their own family group. And it's much more persuasive to show by example than by any kind of coercion from the top. And actually, an interesting thing that has happened in the last 2 years is that there were abortion bans in the United States, and the final result in 2023 was that there were actually more abortions in the United States than before all that, and which was really surprising to me, but which really shows that an effort to impose culture from above with the force of law, tends not to work and can backfire. Actually, it's much more important to build culture from the ground up without force, but with example.
That sounds very true.
And interestingly, where there are another point that I would mention in relation to this is that actually large families are actually contagious. Having children is contagious. So if a conservative wants people around them to have more children, one of the best things that they can do is have children themselves, and that will tend to rub off on the culture around them. It will, where people see their peers having children, they are more likely to have children. So that could actually be more impactful than trying to simply tell people that they have to have children. So conservatives can model it without even any political force, but just by the personal example. That is one great answer. Another point is religiosity, and in the the chart on the left is from the United States, but there is a very strong correlation between church attendance and fertility. Couples who are families who attend church weekly or more average around 2.2 births per woman, so actually above replacement, while families that do not attend church or are non-religious have about 1.3 births per woman. So there's a dramatic difference in fertility between religious and non-religious people. Now in Germany, church attendance is now very, very low. It's actually, you compare church attendance with interest in Bundesliga, you will find that a dramatically more people are interested in the Bundesliga than in church attendance. So it is not surprising then that German fertility is.
And the interest in Bundesliga is dropping as well.
Of,
I don't know if you know that. So
oh, maybe at the end. Yeah, we do see this in recent years.
so that means something.
Yeah. So maybe not enough young fans now.
Because they're not having children. But
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah. So
Please continue.
yeah, sure. It's a very important correlate. Now that's a very difficult thing to change, but it is very important to talk about because it is one of the strongest factors. I do not know of any culture that has above replacement fertility in the world today that is not religious. So if you really want to have above replacement fertility, it does seem that religiosity and particularly church attendance are crucial. And the reason I say church attendance and religiosity are not quite the same thing. Church attendance has the practical advantage of giving people a community of other families, and that community seems to, completely aside from any particular beliefs, the community itself seems to be something that strongly supports family formation. So now housing is another area that I think there's a lot of room for improvement. Germany has here you can see this chart of Europe, and Germany has one of the highest rates in Europe of apartment living. And the problem with that is that apartments tend to be conducive to much smaller families than standalone houses, what's called single family homes in the United States. And we can see that the average dwelling size has a very strong correlation with birth rates. So this is a very important part of pronatal policy for Germany going forward. It would be to focus building and construction on single family homes on suburbs rather than more apartments. And this is something that we have to really think deeply about, because a high-rise apartment building, you build that could be around for 100 years or maybe several hundred years even. People live in houses now that have been built hundreds of years ago. So the type of housing really matters a great deal, and we can see where the lowest birth rates are in the world are cities in East Asia, where most people live in high-rise apartment towers. Within different housing types, probably high-rise apartment towers are the worst for birth rates. A smaller garden-style apartment that had maybe a few stories, with playgrounds around, would be better. Townhomes would be better still, and single-family homes would be better still for birth rates. The more space, a yard to play. These are things that tend to lend themselves to larger families. It would. I am a father of 6. It would be impossible. I can't even imagine trying to raise 6 children in an apartment. That would never happen. And so you really need to have larger families in order to solve this problem, because so many people will be childless. Merely to balance out all the childless people, you need to have large families, and the built-up architecture for large families is a more spread out, more horizontal structure of single-family homes and suburbs, the way the United States and also Australia does this as well. Australia is another great exemplar of suburban housing that does tend to lead to a higher birth rate. And as you see, Australia does also have a higher birth rate as a result. We hear that's my youngest. He's just turned 2. We have a heavy snowstorm around here, and so he's been playing, but he's probably getting kind of cranky now. Here, homeschooling. This is a point, and homeschooling is extremely popular in the United States. There are 4 million homeschoolers. Germany is one of the rare countries in the world that does not allow homeschooling, and it would be probably a very good idea if Germany did allow homeschooling, because homeschool families are a very high fertility subgroup. So, and the data seem to show that academically, homeschoolers do tend to perform very well. So,
May I
and
ask here? Sorry.
sure.
Is that seems to me to be a little bit the issue, kind of like what came first, the egg or the hen? So what I mean is, do homeschool families have many children, or families which have many children, they tend to homeschool? Because it seems to me that they, as I maybe use from the media, that they, from the United States, of course, we don't have it in Germany, unfortunately, I think, that homeschool families in the United States are more conservative, and they do not trust public education, and that's because they're more conservative, they have more children. So
Yeah, that's a good question, and that would be kind of difficult to figure out a little bit. But one thing that I think Germany should think about and welcome are different types of groups. America has a lot of different types of groups, that are that are outside of the mold, if you will. For example, you have the Amish, who have, if you're familiar with the Amish, the average family size in some Amish communities can be 8 to 10 children. It's just extraordinarily high. You have Orthodox Jewish families. You have sort of traditional Orthodox Catholic, who are kind of distinct from the broader Catholic culture also. So you have a whole range of different high fertility subgroups in America. And I think, to solve this problem, you really want to be welcoming to groups like that, and really allow different groups that find different ways to develop their own pronatal subcultures. You want to really embrace that, because it's an existential problem, and you want to. And this doesn't mean that everybody should do this, but it's one more option. And one of the guiding principles, I think, is that you want to allow every kind of option. The more choices people can have, the more ways people will find to make it work. Some women will want to work, will want to be focused on career and have family. Some women will want to be focused on raising their children exclusively. The best answer is all of the above. You want to have a broad, welcoming culture for all the different ways that people want to do family. And so marriage is a lot less common in Europe than America, but marriage is very important to talk about, because couples who are married are much more likely to have children if you look at the data, and they will tend to have larger families. And at the same time, as I've said before, you really need to be encouraging of every kind of family. And I have people that are very close to me that have a very modern model, or I don't know, modern, but living in Europe, that have children outside of marriage. You need to welcome those families also. So on the one hand, it's a good idea to incentivize marriage, because marriage does really tend to be supportive of family formation, and at the same time, you don't want to, ostracize or push out families that want to do it differently. So you have to have kind of almost like two contradictory concepts in mind, and try to keep them both as common goals. On the one hand, it's great to encourage marriage as a wonderful model, and on the other hand, you want to be welcoming of all families. In Germany, for example, if you cut out the families that have children outside of marriage, if you eliminated those from the picture, you would have a fertility rate of less than one child per woman. So just mathematically, you see that would be a catastrophe. So you really have to try to welcome all families, even as you encourage marriage. And let's talk now about education. So Germany is one of the countries in Europe that has the highest average age of women having children. And this probably helps explain why so many women in Germany are finding that they do not have the children that they wanted to have. So the simplest answer, and this is a policy answer that is literally free, because kids are in school anyway, kids receive education anyway, is to educate kids while they're in high school about the fertility window. The fertility window being and here we can see this on the next chart. We can see that fertility declines sharply throughout the 20s and 30s, and young people, even as teenagers, need to be aware of this. They need to be educated about this because too many people who wanted to have children will end up childless, and the most common reason for infertility is simply that the fertility window closed. And this is an incredibly important point to realize, because in some sense, for a lot of people, career success and life success and hitting one's financial goals and so forth doesn't really happen sometimes until people are in their 40s and beyond. But actually that's actually way too late usually to start a family. If people want to start a family, they have to try much younger than that in most cases. So that education in high school and for young people, well before adulthood even, about the fertility window, so that they can plan their lives in a way in a way that they can have form families early enough, get married early enough to ensure that they can have the children that they want. That is a crucial policy point, and it actually doesn't cost anything, because it turns out now that far more women end up unintentionally childless than having unintended pregnancy. So much of education, at least in America, is focused still in high school health class and so forth on teaching people how to avoid unintended pregnancy. But meanwhile, we're now in a world where a much bigger problem is unintended childlessness. So the education system needs to take that into account and really change and reverse the education norms on that. So here, talking about education here, Germany, this is a wonderful thing that we don't want to lose this. Germany is the most educated country in Europe. You can see years of schooling. Germany has more education. Germans are more educated than any other country in Europe. So this is a wonderful thing. But the downside of this is that for women, the more education, the fewer children they have. And the reason is very simple. Education takes a very long time, especially for advanced degrees like a PhD. And it uses so much of the fertile window. So the policy solution for this is very straightforward. You need to have faster education that happens more quickly. Maybe instead of getting a PhD in 10 years from after high school, maybe it can be done in 5 years. That would leave 5 more years of a woman's most fertile years when she can also have a family. Because I think most of these women with PhDs and medical degrees, most of them really want to have a family, but those women with advanced degrees are the ones who are often least likely to be able to realize the fertility that they desire, and they are some of the ones with the greatest disappointment. And one way to solve that problem is to have earlier or faster degrees that don't take as long and are more concentrated.
Daniel, that's one part of it, but also what I heard is this concept of having family-friendly campuses. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I haven't been fortunate enough to witness such a family-friendly campus personally, but I've heard that in a few states, I think I saw maybe the University of Idaho comes to mind as one that where where it is not uncommon for young couples to be married, and in college in the United States that is extremely rare. But
Hmm.
that's a wonderful point, actually. Education systems that are not so uh, exclusive of people uh, who have families.
Yeah,
It is possible. You know, the working somebody's working life can extend to age 70 and beyond. So there's a very long time to for education and career, but the window of fertility, especially for women, is much shorter.
yeah, yeah. So the idea is that actually, that's how I heard it, at least, is that also that these campuses are very welcoming of actually not only couples, but couples which have maybe the first or second child already, and so there might be childcare on campus or something like that,
Oh, yeah,
and or
that would be
more
a
flexible
wonderful,
courses.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that should be understood as a a progressive idea, and this is one reason to that really political cooperation across the aisle on this
Mm.
topic is incredibly important to encourage uh, to because accommodating women and the needs of women is very often kind of the policy realm of various progressive political parties, and that kind of cooperation I think is really essential. Again, as I've stressed before, we the this can't be seen as a right wing thing, but actually, the desire to have children is universal, and the solutions, must come from all across the political spectrum in a
I
very
agree.
broad way. Um, so let's talk a little bit more about policy. I think Germany does a wonderful job in compared with most of the world, in comparison to most of the world, in certain areas of policy, including, as we talked about the childcare, uh, family supports, Kinderbeihilfe, I think it's called, um,
Hmm.
and the paid leave around having children. Um, so there are areas of improvement that I've looked at. Surrogacy, which is where uh, a couple that may have difficulty carrying a child is able to use a surrogate from another willing person, is currently not permitted in Germany. It's permitted in America, in Israel, in I think most of the world. So that an egg donation is another example. So in other words, um, more as the guiding principle here again, as always, is more options. And even if somebody feels some personal religious qualms or whatever about some particular uh, technology, a great role model in this process, or in thinking about this, is Israel. Israel is obviously a very religious country, but in Israel, having children is paramount, and so all kinds of fertility support technologies are embraced, all in the name of really encouraging family formation, which is one of the highest causes in Israel. And so we should see that, we recognize Israel as a great example, and the fact that they have really embraced all manner of kinds of pronatalism, even technological solutions that might make some religious people a little bit uncomfortable. In other words, you want to really have you want to have a wide open door, a big tent, to really encourage every kind of uh, solution, and be welcoming of all family types and all ways of getting there.
Hmm.
Um, so that's another point, is home financing. Uh, Germany, as we can see in the chart on the right, uh, is a laggard, lags behind most of Europe in home ownership. Home ownership in Germany is less than 50%. It's uh, more. It's 2/3 and more in most of Europe. So uh, one area of policy improvement is probably better home financing for young homeowners in particular. And the United States has often had very wonderful options for home financing to make it possible for people to have families and people to buy homes even when a young person lacks the cash currently. They have a lifetime of earning ahead of them, and so mortgages make sense for young people. In the United States, there's a lot of government support for mortgages, and that really seems to support young home ownership, which is crucial. If somebody is not able to buy a home until they've saved enough money at the age of 50, that's not going to help them to have the family that they hope to have. So and that could also help with building wealth. Germany lags behind much of Europe in terms of the average wealth per family, and that is tightly tied to home ownership, because in America, and I think in most places in the world, wealth is tied to home ownership. And particularly if homeowner aiming for young people to be able to own a home is a big part of giving young people the confidence to have a family and even to have a larger family. Another point is the environment. So there's a lot of negativity, especially among young people, around the environment, and people are of the view that they should not have children because the environment is getting worse. Climate change. There's kind of a panic among young people, and a gloominess. Doomsterism, perhaps, is another way to put it. And that's all. That is not backed up by the data. All sorts of environmental figures are getting much better. Air pollution. On the right side, we have air pollution for a range of different pollutants in the United States, and air pollution in the United States has been dropping sharply for a very long time. So we're winning the environmental battle on many different fronts. The United States and many other places have more forest cover now than they did 100 years ago. So things are getting a lot better in the environment, but we have to do a much better job of communicating that. And I would also add that for Germany, there is a particular reason for Germans to be pronatalist, which is the Germans are the leading environmentalists in the world, and Germans are a mere 1% of the world population, but are the leaders of the environmental movement. So if you care about the environment, you would want there to be more Germans, because Germans are the forefront of the environmental movement. Actually, this is an interesting and uniquely German point. So here are some concluding points. Is the most essential thing, as I was emphasizing, is the orientation of society toward being pronatal. And that's what we see in Israel, what we saw in France, as France went from having the lowest fertility in all of Europe during the previous century to having the highest fertility in Europe now. We see that building a broad pronatal culture with buy-in across society, where the whole of society really believes and appreciates that we value children above everything else. That's the biggest message to take. It's not an issue that you think about now and then, or once in a while. But for those countries that are solving this, having children and raising children is a first principle. And so I would say that people who every serious person should concentrate over a lifetime on becoming an expert on family formation. So each one of us becoming a source of education and knowledge to educate many people around us. So we should all become experts. We should all become pronatalists, and we have the survival of civilization itself to worry about. And I again make that point. For Germany specifically, Germany should be embrace its role as the caretaker of even the global environment. Germany is a leader now in the global environment, and this is an important cause and a reason why the world needs more Germans, because to solve the world's environmental problems, Germans are far ahead of most of the world on this. So that's a great way of thinking about it for Germany particularly, and because Germany obviously needs to think about how to communicate in the best possible way, and I think that's one great way to do it. So that's the end of this presentation, and any discussions and so forth.
Well, Daniel, thank you very much. That was a very insightful, very empiric, fact-based presentation you gave, and there's a lot to take in. So I'm really happy and really grateful for your presentation. There are a few questions from the viewers, and I also have one or two questions from my own. Maybe before we start, so what I said that your presentation was very data-based. The one question was by the one and only wrote on YouTube. A very interesting talk. Can we find your sources listed somewhere? So maybe is it possible you can make that public?
Yeah, some of those are where I cited studies. I tried. I put the some of the paper, the header of the paper in the PowerPoint there, and maybe I can share the PowerPoint as well. A lot of the charts also come from what's called the Institute for Family Studies, which is you can Google that. That's a think tank based in the Washington D.C. area. It's probably the foremost leader in the world on understanding what are the different factors that encourage family formation, and they have a wealth of charts and figures that are publicly available. And I actually have to credit Lyman Stone as well, who has like a huge share of the work, of the output of the Institute for Family Studies is by Lyman Stone himself. So I'm gonna credit him and call him out specifically as somebody who's done a tremendous amount of pioneering work on the factors that have guided that are most influential in fertility, and that's a great resource. You simply can Google Institute for Family Studies and look at their research, and there's a wealth of studies. Most of these studies actually on the factors that are correlated with fertility have been done in the United States, but I think you're gonna find that that most of that translates universally.
Yeah, Lyman Stone is a great researcher. I also read very a very number of his research articles, and I do absolutely agree with you. I also suggest looking into the publications by the Institute for Family Studies. So now returning back to the gist of your presentation, what I could take away was that on the one hand, there are certain factors which you can clearly draw out, which are cultural factors, yeah, like being married, being conservative, being religious, which are determinants for if people have more children in relation to other groups. On the other hand, then you have, of course, factors such as housing or education and so on. So, but the point you made and you emphasized a lot is that this being pro-natalist is not shouldn't be seen and brought forward as a right-wing conservative issue, but it should be recognized across the political aisle as a general problem we all face. And also, what you warned is that there shouldn't be when you see government pushing a certain conservative agenda or pro-natalist agenda, you always see a backlash towards that. But then the question that this kind of balance act, which I now see as a big problem, is that who else than the government, who else than the state can support increasing religiosity, conservative values, marriage. I understand your point. You said that, of course, we should embrace all forms because we need to have every birth. It doesn't matter which way the child came onto our earth. Yes, we just need to support every chance we have. I
Yes.
see that, but do you agree with me? There's this kind of balancing act that there are certain issues apart from housing, maybe, where it's not so political. Everyone agrees that there should be more housing, more affordable housing, but there are issues which are very political, like increasing religiosity, for example.
Right, and there are parts of this that can't really be addressed quite in the realm of policy. That's so part of that has to, it is really in culture, and cultural work can be, quite separate from policy. And I would also add that, for policy to really get buy-in from across the political spectrum, I think it is very important, uh, not to avoid partisan fighting, to really build wonderful relationships. This may be very hard, but it may be incredibly hard, but it's incredibly essential on this topic because, as I've mentioned, uh, there is a significant partisan divide by gender. Here's an interesting fact that actually blew my mind, but it's actually true: is that in the United States, uh, interracial marriage is now more common than interpolitical marriage.
Hmm.
So it's actually more likely to marry across a racial divide than across a political divide. So there's something to think about. Then you have a big problem uh, if so many men are on the farther right, so many women are on the farther left. Uh, you know, y- they may not want to form families with each other, and then you can see mathematically that you have a big problem. So there is a very important practical reasons to, if possible, to try to work across the aisle, try to make unity, try to get along, and turn down the volume of rancor. And especially, I would advise for young men who hope to have a family to really learn to be uh, very generous and open to people of all uh, viewpoints, particularly since a conservative man is going to find, uh, there are a lot of women who have more liberal viewpoints, and if those people are going to have to, you're going to need more of these interpolitical marriages. Otherwise, you've got a big problem. And I mentioned Korea. Korea has this huge problem of so many uh, uh, men on one conservative side, so many women on a very liberal side, there's this huge rancor, this anger, this negativity between men and women in Korea right now. And what do we see? We see the lowest birth rates in the world. So that's on the topic of families, uh, political cooperation, and finding ways to have unity and have sensitivity to policies that the left is interested in is incredibly important
Mhm.
for that reason.
So Daniel, you touched on career choices, combining the possibility for having a good education also with having children at an early, let's say, stage within the fertility window, as it is called. Another issue or a question which I have is that um, the way, at least as I see it in Germany, but maybe generally in the West, is that there's this general idea, this drive that a woman is not emancipated, a woman is not free, a woman is not progressive, is not a desirable image if she doesn't work, if she doesn't pursue a business career. And of course, there's the value argument with this notion, but also there's this argument which I hear from many economists in Germany, which argue that look, in Germany, we have a skilled labor shortage. We have quite a number of women which are not within the labor market. So we should do everything we can to make those women work, go seek a job, start a career, and so on. And the argument, so the practical argument, not value-based argument in that sense, but very down to earth, that's what the economy needs to grow, is that, well, we get those people on the labor supply, we increase the labor supply with more women, with more mothers potentially. But what I ask, and I asked a lot of economists, and I never got a really good answer to this, is that, okay, fair enough. Now you increase the labor supply with having more women on the labor market now, but ceteris paribus, they are not likely to have more children than they would by staying at home. So if they work, they're less likely to have more children. My That's my gut feeling about this, actually. Then you have the problem in the next 20 years or so, at the time when the children which haven't been born would be at working age, that there will be a lack of labor supply, because now those women went into the labor market, but they're not having the future labor. Do you understand my argument?
Sure,
What is your view on this?
it's a very difficult problem. It's a there's so much short-termism. I mean, especially and even more where this is more extreme even is countries in East Asia, where there's Japan, Korea, China uh, are so obsessed with current economic success. Korea is astonishing the world with its incredible technology. Many of our cell phones are made in Korea. Some of the top technology in the world. They have quickly become one of the most advanced countries in the world, but they're headed for an economic cliff, simply because there is very little next generation. So this is that is a very short-term view. But again, one has to be incredibly careful about communicating this, because the best answer that you can give, the answer that is most pronatal, that is most likely to lead to higher birth rates, is a position of welcoming all kinds of solutions. If somebody wants to stay at home and focus on raising children, that's wonderful. If somebody wants to work while raising a family, that's wonderful too. We want to welcome all of it. And one point that I would make as well, a solution that should really be strongly advocated for, I think, is work from home, especially for women and for mothers. But because to the extent that can encourage working women to have the family that they hope for, that there is data that came from actually Lyman Stone at the Institute for Family Studies did this during the pandemic. He found that there was in the United States a little pandemic baby boom coming from work from home, and so work from home is a wonderful policy for family formation, and that's a great way to kind of bridge that gap for a lot of people. And so that is one solution. But I fully agree with you that in some sense you could argue that it is actually misogynistic to try to force women to denigrate women who are focused full time on their families. That's if women want to make that choice, we should support that also, and we shouldn't denigrate that as a society.
Yes, I agree. Thank you very much. So when we talk about the backlash which might happen from a conservative government, right-wing political forces pushing a conservative, pro-family, pro-natalist agenda, you gave an example about the United States, that actually in those states where they abolished abortions, the number of abortions increased, right? So there was a question from the viewers. They asked, how did you measure that? If there are illegal...
Well, you can look at the total number. I'm talking about the total number of abortions in the United States. So obviously in the states where abortion was severely restricted or banned in
Mhm.
most cases, people simply travel to neighboring states, and
Mhm.
so the number of abortions in the end ended up being slightly higher
Mhm.
in 2023 than they were in the year before. So, which is uh, I think quite a counterintuitive result, but it really shows that these kind of cultural things often uh, can't be dictated. They have
Mhm.
to be uh, they have to uh, come through uh, cultural uh, persuasion, sometimes even on an individual basis or within people's social circles, and efforts to force this from on high, uh, will often um, can give you the opposite effect. And I think that there are enough countries in the world uh, that that seem to illustrate this, uh, to suggest that there's a lot of truth to this. Countries like Poland, countries like South Korea. Poland until recently had very conservative leadership. South Korea has right now very conservative leadership and the lowest birth rate in the world. So if you really have to get buy-in from the other side, and you have to have unity on this topic of family formation. You have to have some harmony with the other side. It seems impossible or very difficult, uh, but these, if something is it looks like it's going to make the other side very angry, it's probably a great idea to back off and look for harmonious solutions, simply
Mhm.
because the data seems to show that that if you have a rancorous situation, especially with a larger share of young women on the left, uh, you may get the opposite effect from what you intended. So
Mhm.
that's a real difficult thing, but we have to face the data and understand that these sorts of things need a gentle approach. They need a unifying approach, and even if it takes longer, again, we need to think of these things not as one political cycle or 1 or 2 years. We need to think of how to build a pronatal culture across decades and across generations. So you know, in the long run, you need to have harmony between men and women.
Daniel, thank you very much. That, I think, is a wonderful concluding remark uh, from your side. I think there's nothing to add to what you have said now. And in that sense, thank you very much for participating in this discussion. I learned a lot. I think the listeners, the viewers, over 280 only on Twitter, which viewed our live stream or view our live stream right now, learned a lot. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm looking forward to talking with you again in the future. And please, if possible, provide your presentation or maybe an article.
Yes, okay, I will provide that, and I will have some materials that I will supply as well, and I can supply some of those to you directly, and you can share that with your listeners. And again, this is a global problem. This is something that we can't we can't think narrowly about it, but we have to, the whole world is going to face this. And another thing to think about going forward is that we're actually a little bit ahead of the curve. We can be very assured that 10, 20, 30 years from now, this is going to become a bigger and bigger problem. So the more that we can become experts on this, the more that we can learn and become more knowledgeable on this problem, the greater our value will be to the future, and the more people will want to turn to us. We can be confident that our own knowledge will be highly sought after on this topic, because world leaders are going to be paying more and more attention to this problem. It's not going to fade, but it's going to become more and more acute. So so this is kind of the early stages. So the more we can educate ourselves and the more we can become experts on family formation, uh, the better things will be.
Both theoretical and practical, of course.
Yeah, practical. Yes. What can a pronatalist do right now? Well, you can on a very personal basis, you can start having children. That is and have a large family, because if you have a large family, you can kind of, one problem with our modern society is that the norm is very low. The norm is 1 to 2 children, or what have you. If you go and have 6 children, you have 8 children or something, you have dramatically uh, smashed the norm for everybody you meet, and you set the norm, you set the Overton window uh, much more broadly on what a normal family size is. And that if you have 6 children, then somebody who has 4 children, won't feel weird at all. We ended up having 6 children in after meeting families that had 10 children. We met some extremely large families, and suddenly we didn't feel weird about having a few more children. So, that's one pronatal thing that any young person can do, is seek to have a large family. You may have more impact than almost anything else you could do for pronatalism.
That's right, and it's a wonderful thing. Well, it's a wonderful thing to have children. I think that's also a thing which many young people just don't understand or don't know, because maybe they're not being taught about this in the media. It's really nice. So there's this idea that having children is you lose something out. Well, I got my first child at a relatively young age, maybe for our times. I guess it was 20 maybe. So, and I do not regret it in a moment, because I wouldn't change anything. Having a child makes you much more complete, makes your life full, makes you happy. So I suggest young people just to trust people who have children.
Yeah.
That you don't miss anything. You miss anything if you don't have children, then you miss out in life.
Yeah, I think especially if you talk to older people, especially people in their 60s and 70s, you know, the thing that they obsess about more than anything else is their children and grandchildren. That, you talk to older people, that is the thing that matters most to them, and those who so but another point related to that is that a lot of times people think they have a lot more time than they have, because you have maybe you may be productive until you're 70 or 80 years old, but only the very first part of your life is a time when you're able to have children. So humans are very funny in that way. We can, most mammalian species can have can reproduce throughout their lives, but humans are the rare ones that have this this small fertility window at the beginning of your adult life. So that's something that young people really need to take deeply to heart.
And to educate yourself. So you heard the man, and the best way to educate yourself is, of course, to follow the Twitter channel More Births. So please follow the Twitter account More Births with Daniel. Thank you very much for having you. Thank you. It was very insightful, and I hope we can talk with each other soon again.
Yes, it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.